With an estimated development budget of nearly $200 million, 2020's Marvel's Avengers is easily one of the most expensive video games ever made. Because of the massive hype surrounding the movie franchise and extremely positive sentiment around Marvel characters at this time, the game was set up to be a massive slam dunk on nearly every single level. But, well, it completely failed and missed its projected sales goals by 40%, leading to the developer to sell off its IP in the middle of the project. No matter how you slice it, Marvel's Avengers was an ambitious title by Marvel Games and Crystal Dynamics. For years, the fanbase asked for a superhero combat game in that Marvel-specific style that wasn't just a cheap, poorly skinned mobile app to tap and play. At first, it broke the quiet market and won hearts and wallets. It wasn't just the best-selling game of September of 2020, it sold nearly as well as Marvel's Spider-Man, supposedly meeting all of Marvel Games' standards and expectations. And yet, Square Enix, the parent company that had funded Crystal Dynamics since 2009, reported that the title only met 60% of their projected profits, even after the introduction of microtransactions. The financial hit was so bad that Square Enix sold Crystal Dynamics not even a full 2 years later, and by February of 2024, Marvel's Avengers was no longer playable to those who had bought it. So why did this title fall so short? What went wrong with Marvel's Avengers, and how did it become a $200 million disaster? To explain how we even got here, we need to start with a bit of backstory about Marvel's foray into gaming. Marvel Games entered the modern world of gaming in 2009 and made plenty of busy action titles with their vault of IPs, but most were lackluster and flat. There was the Marvel Ultimate Alliance series that began in 2006, but it was a niche game franchise that missed the mark of what Marvel was capable of doing. They'd never really pushed the envelope to create something that fully encapsulated the Marvel brand image, and as 2019 rolled around, things were about to change with their most ambitious and expensive project to date. It was time for them to partner with Crystal Dynamics to create something truly impressive. Since 1992, Crystal Dynamics has made hit after hit, from their first 32-bit game, Crash and Burn, to the long-running Legacy of Kain series. By 1998, they incorporated into a large game publishing company called Eidos for a whopping $47.5 million, and Eidos acquired Crystal Dynamics' entire backlog of games and upcoming lineup. Crystal Dynamics' value was sky high, and Eidos took it even higher when they gave the next Tomb Raider to Crystal Dynamics, who hit it out of the park for over 25 consecutive years of cult classic successes. In 2009, things continued uphill, and the Japanese company Square Enix purchased Eidos and its properties, including Crystal Dynamics, for approximately $130 million. Square Enix was behind tons of successful games in tons of genres by 2009. We all know about the domination of Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts over the market. Even their standalones became classics that are still talked about today, like Sleeping Dogs and Hitman Absolution. And of course, we cannot deny the massive success of the Tomb Raider series under Square Enix as well. Things were looking great for Square Enix on the surface, but these huge sales numbers and chart toppers that made their competitors jealous were actually drowning the company. If they saw profit from any games, they rarely kept the funds, instead investing in new companies and the large productions that they continued to funnel out to happy fans. Even in 2006, with the huge releases of Kingdom Hearts 2 and Final Fantasy 12, ballooning budgets and unmanaged expectations left Square Enix with a profit cut from 17.5 billion to 10 billion yen. 2013 saw the release of Hitman Absolution, Tomb Raider, and Sleeping Dogs, but even with the relatively successful launches of these games, Square Enix still missed their expected gross sales by 6 million units. Profits and expectations aside, Crystal Dynamics basked in the critical reception of Tomb Raider. With the passion that Marvel sought for their source content and the resources that Crystal Dynamics had at their disposal through Square Enix, the collaboration on Marvel's Avengers was formed. This collaboration seemed like the perfect match, and an exciting, action-packed game was just around the corner. Exciting action-packed games are what keeps my heart beating, and nothing makes it beat harder than the sponsor of today's video, War Thunder. War Thunder is by far the coolest, most immersive, and most comprehensive vehicle combat game on the market, and it's available now for free on PC, consoles, and mobile devices. In this game, you take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from over 10 major nations. Whether you prefer the 1920s era biplanes and armored cars, or the ships and main battle tanks of present day, War Thunder is full of incredibly detailed vehicles, insanely high quality graphics, and authentic sounds that really place you at the helm of the most powerful war machines of our time. And now, with a new mobile version that you can play right now on iOS and Android, you can experience the massive multiplayer battles of War Thunder at your fingertips on the go. So join a worldwide community of over 70 million players today and delve headfirst into the awesome experience that is War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile by using my link in the description and pinned comment. There is a massive bonus pack available right now on PC and consoles for new and returning players who haven't played for at least 6 months. You can get this if you use my link, and it includes an exclusive vehicle decorator called the Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of a premium account. Now, about that partnership between Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix for Marvel's Avengers. The game would stand out from other superhero titles through a combination of a polished, single-player, story-driven campaign and a combat-focused co-op experience. Each of these were done individually in the past with Marvel games, but there had never been a superhero experience that was enjoyable in both single-player and co-op. There would also be a variety of playable characters and even a looter-shooter gameplay loop focused on a huge variety of loot with differing rarities, stats, and powers. The game sounded awesome, and it had the potential to be the game of the decade if done correctly. So, work began on the Avengers project in 2017, and from the start, it was clear that this was going to be a massive project. Crystal Dynamics had to work constantly with Marvel games to ensure that the universe was canon and that plot arrangements made sense with the rest of the Marvel universe. They were aware that fans were extremely passionate in particular about how things in the comics existed in relation to each other, so it was important for the team to make sure that the setting, the characters, and the story aligned perfectly. If it didn't, the game would be a complete flop from the start. But this was just the tip of the iceberg when it came to tackling the challenges of making a successful Marvel Avengers game. This game was aiming to be different, bigger, and better than anything that Marvel games had ever worked on in the past. It needed the option for online co-op, but Crystal Dynamics had only ever produced single-player games. So, as stated by their studio head, Scott Amos, they had to rebuild their structure as an organization and as a studio pretty much from the ground up in some areas. Crystal Dynamics had to coordinate between 5 different companies that their engine and game elements were spread across: Crystal Dynamics, Marvel Games, Square Enix, Nix's Software, and Eidos Montreal. They had to construct a new building to get control of their assets and workflow and create a new Crystal Northwest studio to tackle the technical challenges of adding co-op to Marvel's Avengers. Square Enix funded Crystal Dynamics' hunt for the industry's best. They hired combat design artist Vince Napoli, known for his work on God of War's 2018 reboot, and 2 top names to help shape their production: Sean Eskig, who is a creative director at Naughty Dog, and Stephen Barry, who is a director of product development for Visceral. With a solid lineup ready to take the reins of this ambitious project, Marvel's Avengers had the foundation for a great AAA title, in the gameplay, the visuals, and the story. It was going to be a massive success, no matter what, right? Marvel and Crystal Dynamics teased small pieces of information the first 2 years of the project to build hype and to keep the audience from losing interest. By the time it was officially announced with a release date at E3 2019, the fans were starving for it, and they were cheering with excitement during an interview that revealed the first 6 characters' voice actors. Then, at the same showcase, the now infamous A-Day trailer was released, showcasing some action-packed cinematic sequences and showing the roster of Avengers that you could play as in the game, and, well, it looked amazing. The release date was announced for May 15th of 2020, and fans, for the most part, were hyped. But by January of 2020, Crystal Dynamics pushed the release date back 4 more months because they, quote, needed to polish things up. As the new release date drew closer, more gameplay and teasers were shown to the public, and hopeful fans started to understand how ambitious this game was supposed to be. The campaign was expected to be 10 to 12 hours long, or upwards of 30 hours for the hardcore completionist out there. It was set to have a Destiny-like playstyle with looter-shooter mechanics, complex skill trees, and leveled gear, and each of the 5 initial playable characters had tons of custom outfits and collectibles that really made the game feel as if it had some depth to it. The combat looked fluid and fun, the story looked awesome, and everything was shaping up to be the best Marvel video game ever made. But, well, there were some major issues from the start that basically caused all of this stuff to be thrown out the window by longtime Marvel fans. First of all, who were these people? This wasn't the Iron Man that fans had spent over 10 years getting to know and love. This wasn't the Captain America that appeared in 11 different films over the last decade and even more comics. And where was Hawkeye? If you look through the comments of pretty much any of these early trailers, you'll see hundreds of them complaining about these two things alone. Second, why on earth was there a deluxe edition that came with hero skins, DLC access, and other game-boosting add-ons when Scott Amos had stressed that there would be no purchase-locked content all the way back at E3 of 2019? Each piece of information that came out with, quote, extra content turned away some players and fueled Reddit fights and worries that the game would be riddled with microtransactions in typical AAA game fashion. There were a lot of red flags, but fans still had hope that Crystal Dynamics would make some calls behind the scenes, and that this would become the superhero game that people had wanted since the dawn of gaming. Maybe they could turn it around before launch. Marvel's Avengers finally released on September 4th, 2020 for nearly every console available at the time except the Nintendo Switch. It was $60 to $80 at launch depending on the edition, and it sold 2.2 million copies in its first month, pushing it to the top of all games sold in September of 2020. And it was still the 7th best-selling game by September of 2021. It seemed like it was doing really well, so why am I even making this video? Well, let's talk a bit more about the game itself. From the numbers alone, it seemed as if it was a success, but reviews trickled in and told a different story. IGN only rated the game a 6 out of 10, with a 5.7 average rating from over 1,000 players. On Metacritic, the user score sat at a 4.9 with 2,000 plus reviews, and the critic score sat at a depressing 67. Now, I already talked about a lot of the issues, like the lack of Hawkeye, the weird casting of the Avengers, the locking of content behind paywalls, and the addition of microtransactions before the game even launched. But there were also quite a few other issues beneath the surface related to the game mechanics themselves. A lot of players thought that co-op mode was repetitive and unrewarding. When the game was announced, it seemed as if the co-op experience and the single-player experience were two separate pieces of the puzzle, allowing for players to get hundreds of hours in this game and causing it to be highly replayable. However, this wasn't the case when the game came out, and players found that the Avengers co-op missions were tied into the story of the campaign. What had been teased as two different pieces of content now felt like a bit of a letdown and made the entire story clunky and off-pace. All over forums, confused players were asking how they were even supposed to approach playing this game, to the point where Crystal Dynamics had to make a post telling players how to tackle it. This split in the game structure also broke the loot system into two parts, so gathering or buying anything in co-op gave you no benefit in the campaign and vice versa. On top of all of this, the main selling point of the looter-shooter mechanics were pointless, as rare gear barely added protection or damage, no matter how much work you put into acquiring it. It seemed as if the developers struggled to build something cohesive, and it caused a lot of people to feel underwhelmed by the actual experience in Marvel's Avengers. The promises sounded great, but the game really didn't deliver. Over the months following the launch, Crystal Dynamics made additions to the game's co-op mode and released a slew of $10 Battle Pass characters and other DLC. This did make it seem as if the game was getting regular updates, but, well, they were really just adding more microtransactions. In fact, these character additions caused even more controversy, as it was revealed in a 2021 article on Screen Rant that you would have to spend $3,000 to get all of this new content that came out with these updates. $3,000 to make an incomplete game feel a bit more whole. Fans were furious and pulled away, and a weird, out-of-place collaboration with Fortnite hardly drew them back. By November of 2020, just a few months after launch, Crystal Dynamics posted an announcement on their website that every single version of Marvel's Avengers would be 50% off for Black Friday. The big slash sale did help to sell some copies, but ultimately didn't change much regarding the mediocre reception of the game. And it was a bad sign, because slashing the price of a $200 million game just 3 months after launch means that copies weren't selling as well as the developers had hoped. But again, maybe players would just need to give it some more time. Fast forward to August of 2022, Square Enix sold Crystal Dynamics to Embracer Group alongside their Montreal offices for a price of $300 million. With the Avengers game having such an uncertain future, this sale really didn't help to make things any better. The financial failure weighed over the team as some of them moved to other projects at Embracer's command. While development continued for extensions of the co-op story and characters through 2022, fans apparently began to notice unanswered loose ends in the plots. Updates came at a snail's pace and were bare-bones additions. The old roadmap for content wasn't being followed, and Crystal Dynamics admitted that they weren't going to post a new one. Plus, with more and more of the team being reassigned to other projects at Embracer, things were not going to be getting better anytime soon. On January 2023, Crystal Dynamics released a post on their announcement page. Development had officially ended, and their last update would be out in March. They had finally stopped charging for Battle Pass characters and ridiculous add-ons, but the playstyle had never really shifted away from the same boring basics. The most entertaining co-op play still existed in DLC, and the overall experience was underwhelming at best. It was a fizzled-out end to the fireworks of A-Day, and even regular players had begun to be a bit disappointed with the final state of the game. Marvel's Avengers had officially failed at becoming what it was promised to be, and all hope was lost for the perfect superhero game. In September of 2023, Crystal Dynamics decided, seemingly out of nowhere, to end support for the game and delist it from all platforms, but they specifically stated that, quote, even after official support is ceased, multiplayer and single-player mode will still be available. Die-hard fans were once again disappointed, but people who had already bought the game were excited about the free downloads of the once expensive content. It was great for people who already loved the Avengers game, but to be honest, there weren't a lot of these people. And as it got closer to the delist date, Crystal Dynamics said the following in a blog post. After September 30th of 2023, we can't guarantee that we will be able to address issues that occur due to unforeseen circumstances. In short, they were completely abandoning their $200 million game. Single player and multiplayer would still be available, but there was no guarantee that it would even work, which for a game that many owners spent $70+ on was a slap in the face. Even worse was the fact that the game was put on a 90% sale just 1 week before all support for it would cease, in a last-ditch effort to milk any remaining revenue out of this financial disaster of a game. And then, just 5 months later, in February of 2024, the game was completely removed from all stores entirely, making it so that nobody could even purchase it if they wanted to. Crystal Dynamics was done with Avengers, and they now focused fully on their next project. Deleted from storefronts and now serverless, Marvel's Avengers was torn out of existence and was never coming back. Crystal Dynamics bit off a bit more than they could chew with Marvel's Avengers, and even more so, their parent company of Square Enix. Everyone involved believed that this project couldn't fail with the massive Marvel name behind it. Just like they'd done with Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, Tomb Raider, and even Sleeping Dogs, Square Enix overestimated their success, and their development costs far outweighed their profit. When Square Enix had failed to make back even 60% of their expected revenue for Marvel's Avengers, they found themselves in a pit that was made deeper by the development of updates on a product that didn't have the financial foundation to support these updates. If the audience loved every part of Marvel's Avengers across the board, it still would have struggled to meet these impossible expectations. It's estimated to have taken upwards of $200 million to develop, according to workers and game analysts. Square Enix reported a loss of $67 million just one financial quarter after Marvel's Avengers was put on the market, so this game lost them a lot of money. Square Enix claimed as early as 2021 that Crystal Dynamics was the wrong fit for developing Marvel's Avengers, but it was the very same excuse that they had given to their shareholders about the original developers of Tomb Raider 25 years before and fell flat against their own mistakes. By the time that Crystal Dynamics was in the hands of Embracer, Marvel's Avengers was too far gone to be worth the upkeep, so they pulled the plug. What did you guys think about Marvel's Avengers? Did you ever get a chance to play it? Did you get it at full price or on sale? How did you take it when the support was removed? Also, what are your thoughts on Square Enix's role in this over-budgeted game that was destined for financial failure? Do you think that Crystal Dynamics was really the wrong choice for development? Let me know your thoughts on all of these in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing and buying me a coffee to help us make videos like this possible. You can find a link to do so in the description. And don't forget to check out War Thunder using my link in the description for a free bonus pack for first-time players on PC and consoles. I will see you guys next time, and peace.